Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Monday, June 15th, 2026. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. On today's episode, in our box office segment, we'll hear from Variety's Rebecca Rubin, who has the dossier on Disclosure Day. Steven Spielberg's latest for Universal Pictures and Amblin Entertainment opened up to a respectable number, and for a wholly original property, that's a win. But it was a rough second outing for Amazon MGM's Masters of the Universe. And then we'll hear from Variety's Todd Spangler, who breaks down the surprise news from the morning that Fox Corp is buying Roku for $22 billion. But before we get to all of that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. Congrats to the New York Knicks. The glow of Saturday night's NBA Finals win is still strong. That team delivered an underdog run for the ages. Nobody, and I mean nobody, at the start of NBA season last fall picked the Knicks to go all the way. As ESPN's Mike Greenberg noted this morning on his show Get Up, this is a true victory for a team effort. There wasn't a single superstar, but it was a team coalescing around a shared goal to end the drought, and that made it all the more special. Congrats to Tina Fey and Robert Carlock. Netflix has renewed the 4 seasons for a 3rd season. Don't miss my colleague Marlo Stern's overview of the UFC 250 fight on the White House lawn that was held on Sunday. He watched all of it, and he has a lot of thoughts to share about it. Definitely don't miss my colleague Rebecca Rubin's story about how Scary Movie came to soar at the box office. It's a thoughtful look at what drives ticket sales these days. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. And now it's time for conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. If it's Monday, we're talking box office with Rebecca Rubin. So far this summer, 2 very low-budget movies have overshadowed the biggest studio pictures. That seems to be a sign of the times. And Rubin points out that year-to-date box office is within striking distance of where the box office was in 2019. Rebecca Rubin, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
This week it was Steven Spielberg's turn to make a big splashy opening with Disclosure Day. Rebecca, how would you say Disclosure Day did?
Disclosure Day will be one of those movies that we're going to need to keep an eye on. It ended up opening to $44 million domestically and about $93 million globally, which is ahead of what tracking was suggesting. Tracking had projected an opening of $35 million domestically and I think a little closer to $70 million. It's great that it improved on what projections were, but when you talk to some rival studios, they argue that it should have had a domestic opening weekend closer to $50 million to justify the price tag. It cost $115 million to produce and $80 million to market it. The way that Disclosure Day holds in its 2nd, 3rd, 4th weekend will be a little more indicative of how this film will be received from a commercial perspective.
That stat in your story really stood out to me, that it $80 million to market. The international number would suggest that the Spielberg name really probably drew people to the theaters just on the strength of the name, do you think? Or am I reading too much into that?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And even when you look at the turnout domestically of audiences, 60% were above the age of 35. It's suggesting that older audiences were the ones who really turned out in force. Those are the people who grew up on Spielberg's films and just consider him one of the greatest directors of all time. And so it's going to be interesting if they can expand the movie to younger audiences. I'd say it got mixed audience scores. It had a B grade on Cinema Score, and so it's sort of middle of the line. It's not a clear slam dunk, but it wasn't rejected either. One thing to note, though, is Spielberg's movies tend to have pretty decent box office staying power. And so it would be surprising if ticket sales just completely dropped off.
This has been a great couple of months for Universal at the box office, so it'll be interesting to see where Disclosure Day lands in all of that. The other big component of your story today is Masters of the Universe, and the numbers are not really going in the right direction for Mattel and for Amazon MGM Studios.
Masters of the Universe had a pretty severe 70% decline from its opening weekend. And I think the big factor here is it just is not connecting at all to younger audiences. Yeah, when it first opened, the people who were coming out were the people who grew up with the toy that was popular in the 80s, the cartoon, but it's just not expanding beyond that core fan base. And right now, the movie has made $84 million worldwide, but it cost $200 million to produce. And so it's definitely shaping up to be a big bomb for Amazon and Mattel, who Amazon was on a pretty good hot streak with Project Hail Mary. And of course, Mattel has only released one other film, which is Barbie, huge sensation.
I think the executives at Mattel would be the first to say, it's about the movie. And as you said, this movie is not connecting with that very important young adult audience that it needs to mobilize to get people to the theaters. And of course, the big story that we've been talking about now for a couple of weeks is the low-budget horror films that are really, really livening up the box office. I believe it's weekend 5 of Obsession, and is it weekend 3 of Backrooms? Did I get that right?
You did, yeah. Obsession continues to do unprecedented business. It made $19 million in this weekend, which, as you mentioned, it's 5th weekend of release. And just to put that in context, it has made more in its 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th weekend than it did in its opening weekend. And that just never happens. The fact that the appetite has remained so strong for over a month is absolutely remarkable. It is the highest grossing release of all time for its distributor, Focus Features, and it will probably end up as one of the highest grossing movies against such a low budget. And then Backrooms also continues to hold very well. It made $12 million in its 3rd weekend. And so these declines are a little more in line with what you would expect from a horror movie. That's about 50% from last weekend. But it's still just doing such incredible business. It's made $160 million domestically and then $262 million worldwide. It is by far A24's biggest movie of all time as well. And so from here on out, everything it earns is for weeks now has just kind of been gravy for both of these movies.
I saw an interesting limited release toward the bottom of your story, Rebecca. Stop That Train, featuring the irrepressible RuPaul. It clearly did enough business to get on your radar. Is this a sleeper?
I'll be interested to see if it continues to expand. It's a disaster parody, and the movie opened to $2 million from just 1,000 locations. And so I think with the reviews being as strong as they are, it could continue to expand. I think people love comedy right now when it works. People want to laugh together. And so, yeah, it wouldn't, not a totally remarkable business, but definitely notable enough.
Well, the movie coming next weekend to the multiplexes will come in with the full faith and credit of the Walt Disney Company marketing machine and even a new Taylor Swift song. Toy Story 5. What metrics will you be looking at next weekend, Rebecca, for Toy Story 5?
I think it's no surprise Toy Story 5 is tracking to be enormous. But if we look at just some of the animated sequels recently that have done incredible business, things like Inside Out 2 and Zootopia 2, both of those films earned well over $1.5 billion. I think there's no limit to how much Toy Story 5 is going to be able to make. It's really more of a matter of just how big our ticket sale is going to get. There's no question it's going to be a huge opening weekend, and it should be the first $100 million opening weekend of the summer. And so that will definitely be a fun one to keep an eye on.
Anything else coming in the next weekend or two that you think we should keep an eye on?
The next few weeks should be keeping up momentum. Something actually that is notable that Rentrack, the formerly known as ComScore, has reported is that the summer season right now is pacing just 3% behind 2019, the last pre-pandemic year. And that was a huge year because Avengers Endgame started the summer. And of course, that is one of the biggest movies of all time. And so to be just 3% behind that season is extremely notable because ticket sales for the most part have been pacing around 30% behind pre-pandemic times. And if something like Toy Story 5 is really able to smash expectations, it could close that gap even more. And Toy Story 5 is going to be followed up with the Despicable Me spin-off Minions and Monsters. There's also Supergirl, Christopher Nolan's movie The Odyssey, as you mentioned, Spider-Man Brand New Day. And so there are a lot of heavy hitters in the back half of summer that could propel this to record-breaking status.
That 2019 measure has become such an important psychological metric, I think, for the business. So here is to the wind at the back of the movies at the multiplexes. Rebecca, as always, thank you so much for taking us through all this so smartly.
Thank you for having me.
And now we get a report from Variety business editor Todd Spangler on this morning's big headline that Fox Corp is going to scoop up Roku. This answers the question that has dogged Fox for the last couple of years about where the Murdoch empire is headed. Todd Spangler, hot off the press, Fox is buying Roku for $22 billion. That's the headline. Help us understand what's going on here on a Monday morning.
This is some pretty big news in the streaming and TV world. It's Fox's answer into how are they going to make a bigger splash in the streaming world going forward.
They've put a lot of energy and resources into their Fox One streaming service, but as we know, that as an island, it's really hard to get traction. This, in one fell swoop, puts them back in the multi-channel business in a big way, and in fact, in a bigger way than they were in the linear world. Fox owns television stations, very strong television stations, but it never owned cable. This is a sort of cable-like subscription business, although very different margins and economics. What was the spin from Lachlan Murdoch, the CEO of Fox Corp, in terms of why this deal and why now?
He says it's going to be transformative. As you point out, it gives them a distribution foothold here. Roku is used in more than 100 million households. That's a very strong nexus point for them to capture eyeballs in terms of selling ads on the content that streams over the Roku platform and getting a cut of the transactions that occur on the Roku platform as well.
And in businesses, they have complementary operations. Roku has a big ad sales operation. Fox has a very big ad sales operation. And Fox has the NFL, which is basically the absolute jewel of the advertising business. You can also see where this marriage makes sense for Tubi, which has really been the plucky star of the Fox Corporation portfolio in the last couple of years as that free ad-supported streaming channel, aka Fast, has really taken off.
They bought Tubi in 2020 for $440 million, and this is a different scale of acquisition altogether, but Tubi has really paid off for Fox. The free ad-supporting things, which include the Roku channel, by the way, it's a very large destination for free content that people watch and stream online. Free ad-supported side doesn't get as much attention as the subscription side of the businesses and the original shows, from Netflix, Hulu, and everyone like that. But it's a really, really good business, and it's a huge business. So that's really paid off for Fox as well. And Tubi has more than 100 million monthly users itself.
This could be also an interesting inflection point for free ad-supported streaming channels because, as you say, they haven't been as big on the original content with Fox now. We'll have every interest in making the Roku channel a bigger player overall in programming. Tubi is obviously on its way, and Tubi does have a little bit of YouTube in it in the sense that it has become a magnet and a haven for a lot of YouTube-type DIY creator talent. Right. And as a place where people can upload and monetize their content, giving them a really, really interesting portfolio of channels and young creators that are having followings. So it is a wild time in media. But I still can't, when I first saw this headline, I still thought that we've known that Fox has a lot of cash on its books. We knew that Fox was going to make a big step at some point. But They're not buying like 10 microdrama companies in Asia. This is a deal that tethers them in a world that they know, a business that they've been in for a long time. So it makes sense. There could have been other choices for this capital, but this seemed to, obviously, they see this as a big opportunity.
The long-term hypothesis for Roku and Anthony Wood there was that this is the future of TV. This is how people are going to watch TV. This is the way people watch and think about TV. And so Fox is saying we're, pointed in the same direction here. In terms of original content, the ad-supported side of the streaming business hasn't resulted in, Game of Thrones type of thing. But look, this is in Fox's DNA, and free over-the-air television, again, distributed through the pay TV guys. It has funded NFL deals and a whole slate of primetime shows on Fox. So, you have to think that the money's going to be there to make the free TV side of this company an even bigger part of the pie.
And this does put them in the hardware business, which is different for Fox, although I guess years ago they did it when they were launching Sky in the UK. But Roku is in that different place where the hardware is a gateway for you to subscribe to other channels and other platforms.
And so you look at this and you say, well, who are the gatekeepers now? It used to be the pay TV operators, and they're still very much in the game there. But Roku is, in a sense, new idea of a cable company where they're the ones who facilitate the distribution point between the content providers and the audience.
And now that business is going to get some Fox muscle. And again, as we know, Fox has cash on its balance sheet, and it looks like now we know how they're going to deploy it. Well, Todd, as always, thank you for getting up early and getting these headlines out before LA is even out of bed. Really appreciate it.
Happy to do it.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. Billy Crystal is going back to Broadway. He'll have a one-man show titled 860, launching at the Imperial Theater on October 21st. It's a 14-week engagement, and the show is directed by Scott Ellis. Crystal will reflect on his life and career and the emotion of losing his home in the Palisades fire last year. Here comes House of the Dragon Season 3. It drops on HBO on Sunday. We love to hear from our listeners, so please send thoughts, gripes, and other feedback about Daily Variety to podcasts@variety.com. Before we go, congrats to Tracy Morgan. Not only did he get to see his beloved New York Knicks win the NBA championship for the first time since he was 4, Morgan is also set to receive the inaugural Flip Wilson Award from the African American Film Critics Association. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Rebecca Rubin and Todd Spangler. Stick, snicks, hick, picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and don't forget to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.